We're on chapter 11, page 295, snow bunkers and panzers. I agreed with him and asked if we had anything to eat, since we had not eaten for a while. He said that he would get someone down from the village to take us to CP. He crawled back into the bunker, and I could hear him whistle into his SCR 536 walkie-talkie. In a few minutes, a jeep came by, probably the same one that came down the trail where we had spotted its tire marks. We jumped on the ride to Edelbruck. We passed several more outposts, arrived in a stone cottage, and were ushered to a warm, cozy room. The warmth was intense after we got used to the brutal cold outdoors. We were interrogated by the first lieutenant, then given something to eat, along with a steaming hot coffee. We were told to bed down in the next room and get some sleep, which we did gratefully. It was daylight when we were awakened by a sergeant and told to get out our gear together. We were to travel back by truck to where our division was, encamped in the 1st Army sector near Grand Manil, some 40 miles northeast of here. We were given a breakfast of hot cakes and coffee, and by the 600 hours, we boarded a truck for the journey back to our division. There were other soldiers on the truck with us. They were to be dropped off at the designated places en route. Luckily, the 6x6 was covered, and I hope that we would not have a repeat of our last episode riding in open trucks. Also, we were the lone truck where areas before we were in convoy of 10 to 15 semis, something the Germans took great pains to destroy. Also, I did not relish returning to the old division with all its ramifications. We heard small arms fire in the distance and a few mortar shells still further away as we dropped past Edelbruck. All in all, the trip was uneventful, and we skirted Bastogne and St. Vith in a wide circle to the north. The only soldiers we encountered were our very own and a few British elements. By early afternoon, we had arrived at our destination and were dropped off at Battalion CP. The lieutenant on duty said he was glad to see us, and he understood that we had a bit of action in the southern sector. We smiled and already could sense the old feel coming back, that the detachment and the unawareness by the command of what was going on. A jeep picked up to take us to our company, CP, and when we arrived there, we were greeted by total strangers. Sergeant Whalen had left several weeks ago, transferred to stateside to a PR position with the Defense Department. Sergeant Rupier, our return platoon leader, had left earlier with possible frozen feet, so the report read. The lieutenant was taken to, whom I'd never seen before, the company just arriving as our replacement. So in essence, we had started out back in the States with Captain Goodnight departing several weeks before we shipped out, was continuing along the same pattern in Belgium. I would accumulate in the exodus and the departure of the remaining cadre of commissioned and non-officer officers. We were strictly on our own, a skeleton of a division, severed from its cadre forces and left the bureaucracy of the Army to determine our fate and even our lives. The lieutenant told us that the platoon outposted several miles up the road at a juncture, and we were in a holding pattern. I mentioned we did not have a crew weapon, and they were short again on 8 men. He immediately discounted my remarks and said that it did not present a problem. Replacements would be available in several days. As for the gun, he would see to it that we were supplied. Welcome home, I thought. Suddenly, our little escapade of Wilt's looked pretty good compared to what lay ahead of us. We reached the platoon CP, and again we were greeted by strangers. We had acquired a mouthy tally for a platoon leader, a retread who had gotten himself a battlefield commission through brown-nosing somebody. I thought by looking at him, he must have been a mail clerk at one time, sucking up to the officers.
That's true, that's true.
He must have been a mail clerk at one time, sucking up to the officers, so they made him a lieutenant.
Yeah.
He gave us some BS about how glad he was to see us, and that our past experience would be valuable to the platoon in the days ahead.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay.
Back to what
Take
I did.
care.
All right, all
Take
right.
care.
All right,
Also,
Take
all
care.
right. Night, night.
Good night, Claire.
good night.
Good night, Claire.
You get tired of listening to this stuff.
Good night, Claire. We had the two ammo bearers who had saved my life, and we smiled at one another. What we had gone through these past several weeks, and the camaraderie we had formed, only to come back to this nonsense and frippery, was too much to grasp. We had operated as a team, looking for one another, with only one goal in mind, to stay alive. With our return, all we had to attain was lost and never regained. He then said I would remain acting as a squad leader until further notice, or until I was replaced. Big deal. I thought, ship me home.
Huh?
You said big deal. The new lieutenant said, you'll stay as a squad leader until I tell you differently. I knew that I was thinking was foolish and unreal, but just the same, that's how I felt about this entire outfit. He broke my chain of thought by asking me who our driver was. When I told him it was Post, he quickly smirky chuckled and said that he was waiting at the motor pool with our equipment. It was a treat to see Post again. As we got reacquainted, we went over the supplies in the trailer. There were still some things of Fink within the trailer. I was disheartened at the sight of them, but said nothing. We acquired a used gun, some ammo, and some extra clothing, which I shared with the ammo bearers. Several boxes of C&K rations, which we had packed at Haverford West. We also had some mail and had caught up with to our outfit. Post had kept it for us, and we're grateful for him being so thoughtful. There were several letters addressed to Fink, and I took, but I did not know what I would do with them. I got 2 mothers from Mother and Sally, and several letters from Ann, and 2 from Jean. It was like Christmas, and I enjoyed to receive them. They're all dated and written in November, just after we left Haverford West. I was glad to hear from all of them. I stuffed all of them into my pack and went back to the roadblock, positioned a gun. It was in a defiled firing position, overlooking the road junction. We had the first squad on our right, and a short distance away the third squad was dug in. Sergeant Rogers' first squad was taken over by a TK. Rogers went back to Paris with a head wound, and he would not be back. Sergeant Kingstone's third squad was heading up by acting squad leader. Kingstone had been killed several weeks ago, and when he stepped on a mine. Sergeant Garson on the first squad evacuated with trench push, and probably not be back. Oh yes, Smith from Evansville days was given a Section 8 discharge shortly after arriving in France. He was probably back in Evansville, married with several kids. I did not envy him. The four of us dug the gun in and seemed strange to be concerned about the crew weapon. Again, we gathered some straw from the barn nearby and placed it on a bunker. We roofed it with heavy logs and dirt and covered everything with boughs and tree limbs. It'd be comfortable for the time being. We set out digging another large bunker for the two of us, and we were not in the gun emplacement. We made it larger so we could stretch out, covered it with straw, and logged it in overhead. I was not too concerned about being overrun in these positions. We were further south and looked like on our assignment as respite, a breather from the things to come. I still miss being on our own, and I wondered if we'd ever recapture those days again. All right, I'll take a break. Let the thing go off. Just take a little break.